خوب تماشا کن شهر ما رو سیاحت کن، قصه داری فراموش کن، قصه ما رو گوش کن.
A good picture would look like, we're really substantially transferred to sustainable generation and consumption of electricity, so that the CO2 risk and the ocean rising risk is mitigated, and we're not looking at having Florida and sort of large portions of the world underwater. That'd be great. Not to have addressed that risk. That'd be enormous. For us to have a base on the moon, base on Mars, be out there exploring the solar system, start building industry on, essentially having human civilization go out there and have it be such that anyone can go to the moon or Mars or out to the solar system if they want, making it really affordable. I do think it's important that there's competition, that there are multiple companies doing this, not just SpaceX. And that AI risk is that I guess there's sort of a benign AI, and that we're able to achieve a symbiosis with that AI. Ideally, the AI. There's somebody who I can't remember his name, but had a good suggestion for what the optimization of the AI should be. What's its utility function? You have to be careful about this because you say maximize happiness, and the AI concludes that happiness is a function of dopamine and serotonin. So it just captures all humans, injects your brain with large amounts of dopamine and serotonin. Like, okay, it's not what we meant.
It sounds pretty good, though.
Oh, you'll love it. Well, I like the definition of the AI should try to maximize the freedom of action of humanity.
Only on Be Positive.
Maximize the freedom of action. Maximize freedom, essentially. I like that definition. But we do want a close coupling between collective human intelligence and digital intelligence. Neuralink is trying to help in that regard by creating an interface between a high bandwidth interface between AI and human brain. We're already a cyborg in the sense that your phone and your computer are kind of an extension of you.
Just low bandwidth input output.
Exactly, it's just low bandwidth, particularly output. I mean, two thumbs basically.
So how do we solve that problem?
The bandwidth thing?
The bandwidth issue. I mean, we've all succumbed to it now. We're all cyborgs. We're just low efficiency cyborgs. So how do we make it better?
I think we've got to build an interface. We didn't evolve to have a communications jack. So there's got to be essentially vast numbers of tiny electrodes that are able to read write from your brain. Of course, security is pretty important in the situation, to say the least. But it's a bit like Ian Banks' neural lace, but in the case of neural lace, it's sort of that's there from when you're born, or it's not a kind of a backup. This would be there's a digital extension of you that is an AI, the AI extension of you, a tertiary layer of intelligence So you've got your limbic system, your cortex, and the tertiary layer, which is the digital AI extension of you. And that high bandwidth connection is what achieves a tight symbiosis. I think that's the best outcome. I hope so. If anybody's got better ideas, I'd love to hear it. Well, we don't talk that much about Starlink, but essentially it's intended to provide low latency, high bandwidth internet connectivity throughout the world. That actually will not be enough cognitive processing power on board the satellite system to in any way be a Skynet thing. Like it's digital AI requires a lot of superintelligence, requires a lot of big servers on the ground. It's too power intensive. But this is intended to provide people with who don't have any internet connectivity with internet connectivity, and it's very good for sparse and sparsely populated and moderately sparsely populated areas, and for giving people in cities a choice of low-cost choice of internet access. But I do think it's going to be important. The Starlink system will be important in providing the funding necessary for SpaceX to develop interplanetary spacecraft, and at the same time, helping people who have either no or super expensive connectivity and giving people in urban areas more of a competitive choice. So I think I think most likely the form of government on Mars would be somewhat of a direct democracy, where you vote on issues, where people vote directly on issues, instead of going through representative government. When the United States was formed, representative government was the only thing that was logistically feasible, because it was no way for people to communicate instantly. A lot of people didn't even have really access to mailboxes, or there wasn't even really the post office was very, very primitive. A lot of people couldn't write.
Only on Be Positive.
So you had to have some form of representative democracy, or things just wouldn't work at all. But I think on Mars, most likely it's going to be everyone votes on every issue, and that's how it goes. There are a few things I'd recommend, which is keep laws short. Long laws, it's like that's something suspicious is going on if there's long law. If the size of the law exceeds the word count of Lord of the Rings, amazingly, then it's like something's wrong. So there should be a limit to the size of the law that you should be able to digest it. Like, how come you can read the Constitution and all of the amendments, like you can read those in maybe an hour? And we govern so much of our civilization by that, and yet modern law is this obtuse, super boring tome that's indecipherable to almost anyone. So I think direct democracy, laws that are comprehensible. I think having some kind of hysteresis on, like, it should be easier to remove a law than create one, because things just get to inertia. You have to have something that's going to overcome inertia. So probably, I don't know what the right number would be, maybe it's like 60-40. Maybe it requires 60% to get a law in place, but any number above 40% can remove a law. Otherwise, you just get laws just accumulate over time, and it's sort of like Gulliver, where you just get trapped by all these tiny strings and you can't move. You get hardening of the arteries of civilization with rules and rules and rules and rules. So it should be just easier to get rid of a rule than to put one in. Maybe they should even have like some kind of sunset clause, so that they just automatically expire unless there's enough of an impetus to keep them around. Well, the first internships that I had that were interesting were on ultracapacitors for use in electric cars. So that's why I first came out to Silicon Valley in like 93 or 92 or something like that, was to work at a company called Pinnacle Research on advanced ultracapacitors, with the idea that this could be a solution to the energy storage problem in electric vehicles. And then when I graduated from Penn, I was going to be doing a PhD at Stanford in material science and physics, trying to figure out if there's a way to solve for an ultra high density solid state capacitor that would have enough range to power an electric vehicle. So So in fact, that's a 95, and then I wasn't sure. This is one of those things where you could work on it for a long time and discover that there's actually no good solution. You could publish a paper and you get a PhD and all that, but it would be academic in its value. So in 95, I had a choice of either
Only on Be Positive.
work on this energy storage system for electric vehicles or try to play a role in building the internet. But the internet stuff was happening right then and there. Whereas the electric vehicle technology was going to progress slowly on its own, whether I was there or not. So I thought, well, I'll put the grad studies on hold and do something to help build the internet or do something useful on the internet. And that's when I talked to Kimball, and you were working in Canada at the time.
Yeah, that's right.
And said, hey, why don't we try to do this company in Silicon Valley?
If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like and subscribe. If you have any suggestions for future videos, please leave a comment below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Please share and like.